Hello, Lotus Chat listeners. We are back. I am Laura Benson with Mammoth Edge Coaching, and I am here with ZeAnn.
Hi.
Hello, ZeAnn.
Hi, everyone.
We are so excited to be here with you because tonight we are talking about guilt and shame. And you may be saying to yourself, oh, what a bummer of a topic. Who wants to talk about guilt and shame? I agree with you, except many of us carry guilt and shame, and sometimes we don't even realize it. And it's an important topic that we need to talk about so that in our growth, we can look at it, we can sort through it, and move forward without the guilt and shame so that we can live fulfilled lives. And so we're going to talk about that tonight. ZeAnn, I'm going to need your wisdom, so be prepared. This is episode 53. I can't believe we've had 53 episodes, but thank you so much, listeners, for being a part of this. You make it worthwhile. Thank you.
Yes.
So, ZeAnn, what's the difference between guilt and shame, and what do we mean by guilt and shame? What in your wisdom?
I reckon guilt is more something that we have done. So it's related more to our actions, our behavior, something that we have probably done in the past, the experience. But I think shame is more deep rooted into more of a sense of ourselves, the emotions that we feel, that shameful feeling, that we feel from the guilt from the actions that we've done. So I think it's that feeling of shame is more something that we feel and internalize it in ourselves. Perhaps when we were young. But what do you think, Laura?
Well, I agree with that. For me, I think guilt is more where we take on the energy that of someone else's actions. So if someone else projects onto us, we accept that guilt, and then we accept the shame. So the guilt is, why didn't I change it? Why didn't I work harder? Why didn't I do something to change their behavior towards me? Which we know that's not possible, but that's the guilt. If I could have changed what they did with my behavior, why didn't I do it? And then the shame is the residual. It's the residual of this happened to me. I felt this way. The shame is the residual that you continue to live with of what happened, whether it be emotional, whether it be physical, whether it be mental, whatever it was, it moves with us through our life, and we're held back by it.
Yeah, you're right, Laura, and you touched on a very good point. Like sometimes this feeling of shame and guilt were being poured onto us. You mentioned about that, and did you felt that way in any ways?
Oh, yeah. I've had people in my life who have treated me much less than respectful. Have not loved me the way they should have not respected me the way they should have. And so I carried the guilt around of, if only I had been able to work harder or do something, then they would have loved me, or they would have responded differently. If only I had been a better person, if only I had accomplished more, they would have seen my worth. And then the shame is, I'm not lovable. And so those are real things that you carry through, that I carry through. If I'm not lovable, then how can I go into any type of relationship and truly love? I think the most successful for me has been my son, and that's unconditional love. And that's a whole different therapy session. But really, for me, that it's truly unconditional love for my son, because I enjoy the motherhood relationship. But I'm talking about other relationships in our life. And I had to do what I call the inner work. I had to do the meditation. I had to talk to people who were more experienced than I was. I had to work through it with reading, prayer, whatever. And so by going through that inner journey of growth, I've left that behind. I realized that their reactions or their responses do not make me who I am. Those are their responses. So that's my experience. Why don't do you have any experiences that you could share with us, ZeAnn?
Yes, definitely. Just now we mentioned about how shame stems from our childhood experience. Then I remember and recall when I was a child, I experienced a lot of body shame. You know, growing up as a girl, I was very thin, and naturally I was very, I would say, what's that word?
Self-conscious?
Yes, self-conscious about the size of my body. Particularly, I'm gonna say the size of my boobs, and it just felt so like, yeah, it felt so, I feel so shy, even wearing dresses and all of that. And it all was brought about because of words from my peers, and then my family, and then boys around me. So I got really self-conscious, and I think from there I carry a lot of body shame, you know, thinking that oh, is that something wrong with me? Why am I like that? But I'm a girl. But you know, so I felt more of that yeah, throughout my childhood years, growing up, even those vulnerable years as a teenager, you know. Yeah.
Well, let's talk about that for a moment, because no matter what our issue is, whether it's love, whether it's body acceptance, no matter what it is, there's a perception that comes to us where we say, and I'm going to use your example if you don't mind, ZeAnn.
Yeah.
You had a perception from others that your body looked a certain way. Now, you don't really see your body. I mean, you can look in a mirror, but you don't really look at yourself. Now that with Zoom, we see ourselves, but you know, but you know, that's not a real reality. That's a perception, and that you were given by others, and then you owned it.
Yes,
and in my case, I owned that I wasn't really worthy of love, and so that I must work really hard for it, and I could never work hard enough. So with that being said, those are perceptions we have to work through. Oh, thank you for sharing that, because I think a lot of people
you touched on a very good point about owning that story. And I think when I was going through that body shame when I was a kid, I owned the story that I was not attractive. That I owned the story that I'm not a beautiful girl, that, you know, I must be weird. I definitely relate with the ugly duckling story.
Well, I mean, we all have a story that isn't true. I think you're beautiful inside and out. But you know, when you feel that inside, it's hard for anyone to change that.
Yeah, correct. No matter what anyone else says, it probably matters less, because what really matters is what you tell yourself. And if you keep injecting with that story in your head that I'm not beautiful enough, I'm not attractive enough, you know, when you were young, imagine growing up with that self-perception.
Right.
Yeah.
So ZeAnn, how can we rewrite the shame story? How do we make that change in our lives?
I think what was really crucial for me while I was growing up was my mom was helping me to rewrite that story. She kept telling me many times that, you know, focus on your inner beauty, focus on your mind, focus on your, you know, things that people can't take away from you, your personality, your character, all these things are not important. And she mentioned so many times, ingrained in my head, you know, that like outer beauty, it comes and it goes, because no one will ever be beautiful forever. And there's always another girl that's always more beautiful than you. So that not focus on those outer beauty. And I think that assurance, that constant pep talk from her when I was young, or when, you know, when I remember when I come back from school and I was like, oh, so-and-so said this, and, you know, they made a comment about my body regarding this. And I say, I don't feel good. And of course it affects me when I was young, you know, for pimples and stuff like that. And yeah, she went through great lengths to show me and tell me that, all this outer beauty is not permanent and it's not important. So she definitely helped with rewriting the story. And I think during ETA, there was another moment. I remember I was talking about this body shame, and my buddy then, she told me that, have you ever looked at your body as an athlete? Like I've heard many people telling me, look at your body like a model, because many models are very thin and, not very voluptuous, but have you ever considered your body as an athlete? And I never thought about that. And I was really grateful, that she said that. Yeah. What about you, Laura? How do we, or how can we rewrite that story?
I think there are a lot of different ways. So for my story, the first thing is, in my world, my grandmother, I was really close to her growing up, and she showed me unconditional love. And that's where I learned how to love my son. But it's still, even though I experienced that, it was still really hard to change the narrative. And so what I found was how when a real significant relationship of mine did not work out, I really had to sit and self-reflect and realize if I can't love myself, or I don't feel I'm worthy, how can I be in a relationship and love someone else? And so in that course, I went and did like reading. I worked with a life coach. I went through meditation. I did a lot of inner peaceful journey where I had to really self-reflect and see where I was coming from, what the story was. And then I truly did rewrite the story. I truly rewrote it and started living it as if I were lovely, I was lovable, that I loved others, but most of all, I loved myself. And if you start practicing that every day, it gets easier until you can say, I love myself. I am worth loving. I am worthwhile. And I think it's a long process, and a lot of people get lost in the process. It is, the thing I hate the most is when someone says, just change your mind, just change your attitude, just shift. I'm like, if I could shift, I would have done it years ago. But it's the hard work, but it's worth it in taking small steps to rewrite the story so that you say to yourself, and I did this, I'm lovable, I am loving, I love me, and I love others, and realize that people who were meant to be in my life will be in my life. And I can show them the love that I have for myself and show that to them. But it was a process of rewriting that story, and I had to believe the story, and I had to make it a reality. Just like we know people who write their own stories and their perceptions, and they're not accurate, you have to change it from what is accurate to what is real. And that's what I had to do.
And I guess everyone gets to, rewrite their own story in their own ways,
Yes.
Yeah. So
exactly.
one of the things that we spoke about just now was that I think all this guilt and shame also stems from social comparison, how we compare ourselves with other people, and how by looking at others, we kind of have this illusion of this is the benchmark, or this is the, this is where I should be or could be, and something as natural and God-given like body can't be changed. And I'm sure there are things in your life that is, it just comes naturally. You can't change that. The other thing that we spoke about was about parenting shame, about shame between a working mom and non-working mom. I have encountered actually many women who come and talk to me. Some of them are working, some of them not working, and both have their kind of, I would say, equal amount of shame. When you're working, you feel guilty and shameful that you're not with your kid. But then when you're not working as a non-working mom, you feel guilt and shame for not being able to provide financially or materially to your children. So I guess from that point of view, I'd like to share that, when we naturally or subconsciously compare ourselves to other people around us, do also compare the kind of timeline that we're at. If you are like, for example, a new mom who's carrying or breastfeeding a
Right.
6-month-old baby, don't look at another working mom who has a 10-year-old, because their life phase is very different, and like your son is already like in his 20s.
Yeah, he's 27.
Yeah, correct. So the amount of time that you get to, enjoy yourself and nurture yourself intellectually and spending time focusing on self is different versus if you were, 10 or 15 years ago. Yeah. So when we compare that, have that timeline in mind.
That is such a good point, especially in the parenting piece, because we tend to look at someone in a different state. I remember when Logan was a toddler, I'd be like, oh, if only he could be older. And then he was older. I thought, well, wait till he becomes a teenager. And then I'm like, well, wait till he goes to college. I mean, but it's really important to realize that every phase is important. And now although we live in the same town and we see each other, I still miss him every day because I don't see him every day. So, I mean, every stage of parenting is different, but you are so correct. We can't compare ourselves from one stage to another because everyone is unique and different in that stage, whether they're a toddler, a teenager, or an adult.
Yeah.
And I think we need to also remember that everyone has guilt and shame. And it's our responsibility to help them rewrite that story. But it has to be authentic. How many times have someone told you or me something about ourselves that we didn't truly believe because it didn't fit our narrative? I think we need, as authentic beings, I think we need to share with people authentically how we see them in a way that is believable. If I just said to you, you're beautiful, your body's great, you might believe it for 5 minutes, but then you're going to go back to your narrative. And same with someone tells me they love me, I'm going to go, what did they not say? My narrative at the time was not accurate. And so I think we have to help other people change their narrative, and we do that by being authentic. So saying, I noticed today that you did something, whatever that is, and I just want to tell you how that made me feel in a good way. And I acknowledge that. And it's amazing how praise and authentic observation can help people feel a little more courageous, feel a little bit more challenged to look at themselves with reality rather than a story. So we have a responsibility to others, and be aware this week as you see and talk to people if their story truly matches where they are.
Yeah, that is great wisdom, Laura. Thank you so much. And so I also want to encourage you that if you're listening out there and you want to rewrite that story, do reach out to Laura. And she has a handle there at Mammoth EH Coaching, and also myself at ZeAnn. And if you like what you're hearing, unless Laura has something else to say.
Nope.
Oh, okay. And if you like what you're hearing, I encourage you to click like, subscribe, or follow both our YouTube and Spotify channels. And we look forward to also hearing our two other Lotus Chat ladies, Laura and Jazzy and Jen, to talk about our topic on guilt and shame. Also, next week, we were going to try about something different, and we want to talk about a conversation about this book, The 7 Spiritual Laws of Success. And we're going to have some conversations about that. Feel free, if you have read that book and you have any questions, feel free to email us, drop us a comment, and we shall see you next week. Signing off. Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.
Hello, Lotus Chat listeners, and welcome again. We have myself and Jazzy for part 2 of this wonderful episode 53, where we talk about guilt and shame. And thank you to Laura and ZeAnn for all the wonderful points that you put together for our listeners and our viewers. And what we're going to do today is we're just going to continue to delve into this topic and hopefully leave you with some really great takeaways and tools and ways that we can actually overcome and or elevate ourselves to get beyond the feelings of guilt and shame and have more powerful, enriching lives. And so what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to give the dictionary definition of what guilt and shame is. And so in terms of shame within dictionary, it says that it is a painful feeling of humiliation or distress caused by the consciousness of wrong or foolish behavior. And guilt in the dictionary is the fact of having committed a specified or implied offense or crime, and as a verb, it is the act of making someone feel guilty in order to have that person do something for you. So both very powerful definitions in themselves directly from our dictionary. And so what we're going to discuss is what those two words actually mean and or feel for us. So Jazzy, would you like to start us off on that?
Sure, why not? So what shame for me is, what I see it's like the shit pit. It's almost like this. To me, it's actually below guilt. I feel like shame is even heavier, more dense place than the emotion or the feelings of guilt. And only because shame is caused by the consciousness of guilt, it says that there's a shortcoming or something that needs to be regretted, or the illusion of impropriety or inappropriateness. Like it's not supposed to be a certain way. It's just this, it's an delusional sort of place. And as for guilt, it's the feeling of where like there's blame, there's offenses, there's it's something that I feel like at least you can work your way up from, rather than in this chaotic delusional place of shame. Guilt at least like has an opening, because I know we'll get into how to get out of that later on, and I know I want to jump to it, but I won't go there. I know that shame definitely provides a place of that's like imprisoning, at least in my perspective. What do you think?
Yeah. I could not have said it better myself. I can definitely relate to what comes after the guilt, which is the shame. And I'm glad that ZeAnn brought up how the shame can actually linger after what you felt was an offense that either was done, against you, or something that you did. That like Laura said, you wish you could have done things differently. You wish if you had done things differently, maybe the outcome would have been different. Maybe that person wouldn't have done X, Y, Z, or maybe this, wouldn't have happened. Now I will be honest with all of our listeners and viewers out there, like this topic was really something that I myself was working through a few years ago. And I can relate to the fact that shame can definitely stay with you longer than it should. And when you feel like you've done some type of offense against someone, and it's something that you would not have wished to have done, you feel like, hey, I could have done better. I could have been better. I could have done things differently. So I will say that it does take a toll on you when you allow that shame to linger, as you said, Jazzy. It becomes like this prison in your mind where you're constantly thinking about, like, my God, like maybe I'm not a good person. Maybe I'm just you start really going into the self-loathing feeling. Like for me, it was sometimes even hard for me to look in the mirror, because I was like, how could I have hurt somebody so deeply that I cared about? Like if I love that person, why would I hurt them so much? So in that sense, I can understand why a lot of us can definitely allow ourselves to get into that pit that you said, Jazzy. And to crawl out of there takes a lot of work, takes a lot of inner work, as Laura mentioned, in order to get yourself out of that pit. And that is what we're going to discuss today, because as much as we could bring up all these examples of what it's like to live in that guilt and that shame, what it's like to feel not good enough, like ZeAnn mentioned, the body shame, that feeling that you are feeling not fully in your body because you feel self-conscious that others are judging you because you don't look a certain way, or because you don't, the perception is that you aren't XYZ in their eyes. It's, again, these are all very powerful examples of what it's like when you are either the cause of the shame or the guilt, and or on the receiving end of other people's I would say other people's just ill perceptions of you.
Though other people can do that to you. They can, people will attempt to place that guilt on you too, but that's emotional manipulation, but that's a whole nother topic.
Exactly. We can definitely, we can go into a whole other Lotus Chat topic about manipulation, especially emotionally. But what we're going to do is, what we want to do is elevate this discussion to allow us to be able to work with you, the viewer and the listener, on getting ourselves out of that vibration of shame and guilt. So that is our next question, which is, how can we elevate from the vibrations of what shame and guilt brings? What can we do, Jazzy? What do you think?
This is taken from my wonderful Lotus Chat sister Jen here. You shared earlier, it's passionately owning the willingness to effectively revolutionize. And in order to do this, to elevate the vibration of shame and guilt, we must take ownership and accountability for what we're feeling, our viewpoints, and the way that we choose to live our path. Again, let's step into main character vibes. We are the victor, not the victim. And you can get out of this funk by embracing your shadow, seeing it, understanding that we can observe a situation, events, a set of emotions around an event. And also remember that if comparison is the thief of joy, then we must realize that we're giving permission for that to escape us, or we're giving permission of a reality that is unwanted and undesired. So that is our responsibility. That is where we take accountability. And be humbled by this, because once you are able to take accountability and observe the situation, you can lean into humility, knowing that you're human, giving yourself forgiveness and grace. And grace is giving radical acceptance, compassion, and empathy to yourself or others. And you get to, once you do this, you get to release self-loathing. You get to release any negative or unwanted emotion by knowing that you have the choice to give yourself permission to succeed. And that the truth is, one thing I learned is feelings are not facts. And what I take away from this is that feelings shift all the time. So if you're having shitty feelings, these shitty feelings might be for now, but it's not forever unless you say so. So these feelings that you're experiencing are not facts. They're not, they're an experience, but it doesn't have to maintain its permanence. So knowing that you do have a choice when it comes to shame and guilt. And another way is to find resources, find a community. Also create new habits. And what are habits? They're practice beliefs. Understanding what your meta programs are. So how you talk to yourself. What does the self-talk look and sound like? Are you stepping into your power, Are you exercising your power? Are you exercising your wisdom? If you're not, then it's time to. What is, and it's just tell them what wisdom is.
No, yes, and I'm glad you said that. So I will just put this out there. It's something that really hit me when I went through this program with Jazzy here and the Lotus Ladies here. And I have it written literally right here on a Post-it note that I've not taken out because I want to see it every time I open my laptop. And it is, a memory without the emotion is wisdom. And it hit me at a time, as I mentioned earlier, I went through this program while I was working through feelings of guilt and shame in various aspects of my life. And when I wrote this down and heard this, I was like, yes, if I can get past the emotion and the memory of the pain and the hurt, there is wisdom there. There is something that I can learn about myself and about life in general. Because as Jazzy said, we are all human beings. And as much as we can say that we want to do things perfectly in life, there will be times when we will make mistakes. There will be times when others will make us feel less than, or will make us feel like we made a mistake. But in the end, what Jazzy mentioned about grace is so important, to practice that within ourselves every single day, especially when it comes to having that acceptance that, yes, this happened. Yes, I can't go back in time. I don't have a time machine and I can't change the outcome now. But what I can do moving forward is whenever I am placed in that situation again, I can choose to do differently. And that is, again, all about permission. Am I going to give myself permission to change and to do better? Or am I going to allow myself to continue to be in that state of guilt and shame and self-loathing and depression and anger and deny that even happened? No, I'm going to be in complete acceptance of what did happen. And that is what I was able to work through with this wonderful community of women that you have seen on the screen and have heard through your radio. And mostly for me, I think the biggest word that I got that helped me work through all that was self-compassion. It got to the point where I was like, you know what? I'm tired of looking at myself in the mirror and feeling like I was no longer who I wanted to be. And I said, you know what? I'm going to change the narrative. I'm going to reframe this. And I'm going to say, you know what? Okay, let's move forward. Let's keep moving on. I have my little statement that I say to myself every morning, that I'm a powerful, loving, worthy woman now. And that's what I tell myself every single day. And thank you to all these lovely ladies who walked through that journey with me. So any person out there listening to us, male or female, please do, do all those things that Jazzy mentioned, especially if you can find a community and or even a person, a mentor, a coach who can help you work through all these feelings of guilt and shame that you might be feeling. Acknowledge their real feelings. Don't let yourself get stuck in that rut, in that, hole of depression or whatever other feelings you may be going through. Just find a way to work through those in a healthy way. Definitely find healthy outlets and healthy ways to work through them. So that takes us to our next topic on permissions. I mean, Jazzy, you did a great job introducing us to what that is like when we talk about permissions in this case.
Permissions. Around shame and guilt specifically, permissions would do best when you exercise your wisdom and create necessary adjustments. So give your permission to thrive, give yourself permission to live, to forgive, to be gracious, because that's all this life is a series of endless choices and permissions. So everything in our experience, our mental, emotional, spiritual experience, are all beliefs that we gave permission to exist and to be true for us. So if we determine the truth, then we get to also realize that these are the choices that we have made. It's not what someone's done onto us, like whether it be something that had happened to us, realize that we also gave that experience permission to exist for us, to teach us something.
Mhm.
And also know that we get to choose what permissions get to exist, but we need to look at what we need to adjust. So I know it's really as simple that I can try to sit here and overcomplicate and overthink it with you guys. But it really just falls down to simplifying what the disruption is. It's because if we're revolutionizing, we can't go in there with the same way of thinking that we went in. We come out differently because we decided to do something different.
Mhm.
So be of good judgment of which is in best alignment for you, and allow that to be the permission you give yourself in living your best life.
Jazzy, thank you for saying that. And may I add that every experience, as you said, that we have not only teaches us, but makes us stronger. And for anyone out there who is struggling with feelings of not feeling loved and feeling like, you like in Laura's case where she mentioned all those examples about having to needing or wanting to, do more in order to have that, or wanting to do XYZ in order to have somebody treat her a certain way, right? I mean, and that guilt that comes and all of that comes with it. I mean, just remember that you are lovable.
Yeah, free
Remember-
yourself from that,
Yeah, free
because
yourself.
you're definitely worth it. And if
Exactly.
someone's out of alignment, that's fine. That's fine.
Yeah. I mean, you are lovable, and you are, you are a beautiful being, and you are worthy of that love. And, even if you feel like somebody that you would like to give you that love isn't ready and or open to giving you that love, it does not mean that you are any less lovable. And there are others out there that there's a quote that I read somewhere that you have yet to meet all the people who will love you. And if not this person, it'll be someone else along your path in life that will come and say, I love you. You're beautiful. You're wonderful. You are an amazing being. And trust me, it'll happen. So don't give up on that journey on yourself, and don't give up on your heart. Don't give up on have that courage. Have the courage to just go above and beyond, to be, everything that you can be, and to work through these issues. And we are here for you. We're part of that support system. If you want to reach out to us via email, Jazzy, myself, Laura, ZeAnn, and yeah. So Jazzy, any last words for our viewers or listeners?
Be easy. Be intentional. Be mindfully intentional about what you're creating, giving permission to. And if these muddy feelings come up, allow it. Don't dwell in it. Don't sit there for longer than you need to. Just observe it, feel it, thank it for happening for you. And then find your way of moving on and past it, because only you give yourself permission of elevating. So that's it. So with all of this being said, I want to thank you all. We want to thank you all for continuing to watch us. And if you're new here, thank you for joining us. We hope that this was helpful for you. We do this every week. We are on a mission to empower women collectively, and also to provide a feminine perspective on the many things of life. So if you have any things that you'd like to share, or any comments, or anything, just anything at all, go ahead and email us, leave a comment. We'll be back at this again with episode 54, and we are looking forward to giving you more love, more light, and more insight. So, signing off. Bye.
Thank you all. Bye.